The ballroom on the 32nd floor of Sterling Tower had been transformed for the company's annual celebration. Crystal lights hung from the ceiling like frozen stars, long tables were covered in white linen, and a massive screen behind the stage displayed the Sterling Dynamics logo beside the words, "A Decade of Excellence." Employees filled the room in their best clothes. Managers stood together near the bar. Department heads exchanged compliments. Younger employees took photographs beneath the company logo. At the center of it all stood Victoria Sterling, the 52-year-old CEO of Sterling Dynamics, wearing a tailored navy blue suit and speaking with members of the executive board. She looked completely in control. Tonight was supposed to be a celebration of the company's record year. But for Daniel Brooks, the 38-year-old senior operations analyst sitting quietly near the back of the ballroom, the evening felt different. Daniel had spent 9 years building his career at Sterling Dynamics. He had started as a junior logistics assistant. He had worked nights. He had taken weekend shifts. He had stayed late whenever a shipment problem threatened a major client. And after his wife passed away several years earlier, he had somehow managed to continue working while raising his 8-year-old daughter, Lily. He had never complained. He had never demanded special treatment. He simply worked. And over the previous 18 months, everyone in the operations division knew that Daniel had been preparing for one particular opportunity. The position of Regional Operations Director. It was the promotion he had earned through years of results. At least, that was what he believed. Daniel sat at his table, adjusting the sleeve of his dark gray suit. Across the room, Lily sat beside Daniel's sister, Emma, who had agreed to watch her for the evening. Lily wore a simple blue dress and kept looking toward the stage. "Daddy," she whispered earlier, "are they going to announce your promotion tonight?" Daniel had smiled. "I don't know, sweetheart. But Mr. Harris said you were getting it." Daniel had laughed softly. "Mr. Harris talks too much." Lily smiled. "I think you'll get it." Daniel had looked at her. That little sentence meant more to him than any award. He reached into his pocket and touched the small silver pendant Lily had given him. It was shaped like a star. She had told him it meant he was her hero. Daniel looked toward the stage again. Victoria Sterling stepped toward the microphone. The conversation slowly stopped. "Good evening, everyone." Applause filled the ballroom. Victoria smiled. "Tonight isn't just about numbers. It isn't about contracts, revenue, or quarterly targets." She paused. "Tonight is about people." Daniel leaned slightly forward. For a moment, hope rose in his chest. Victoria continued, "This company has grown because extraordinary people chose to give Sterling Dynamics their time, their loyalty, and their talent." More applause. Daniel looked around. Many of his colleagues were smiling at one another. Then Victoria said something that made Daniel's expression change. "And tonight, we are going to recognize someone who has demonstrated exceptional leadership potential." A large photograph appeared on the screen. It was Ethan Sterling, Victoria's 27-year-old nephew. Ethan stood in the picture wearing a designer suit, smiling confidently. Several employees immediately exchanged uncomfortable glances. Daniel stared at the screen. Ethan had joined the company only 8 months earlier. He had never worked in operations before. He had spent most of his time in the executive office. He had attended meetings. He had accompanied Victoria to conferences. And despite his limited experience, rumors had been circulating for weeks. Daniel had refused to believe them. Until now. Victoria smiled proudly. "Ethan has shown tremendous initiative." Daniel's fingers slowly tightened around the pendant in his pocket. Victoria continued, "He has demonstrated the vision necessary to lead our regional operations division." The room became strangely quiet. Daniel stopped breathing for a second. Then Victoria said the words, "Effective immediately, Ethan Sterling will become our new regional operations director." Applause began, but it was weak, scattered, uncertain. Daniel didn't move. Lily looked at him. "Daddy." Daniel stared at the stage. Ethan walked toward Victoria. Victoria hugged him. The applause became slightly louder. A few executives stood. Daniel remained seated. Beside him, Marcus Harris, the head of operations, looked absolutely stunned. Marcus leaned toward Daniel. "Dan." Daniel slowly shook his head. "It's okay. It isn't." Daniel looked at him. "Not tonight." Marcus lowered his voice. "You were supposed to get that position." Daniel forced a smile. "I know." Across the ballroom, Ethan accepted the microphone. "Thank you, Aunt Victoria." The word "Aunt" echoed through the room. Everyone heard it. Everyone understood. Ethan looked around confidently. "I know I have big shoes to fill." Someone at the back whispered, "Those aren't shoes. They're Daniel's." Another employee quickly looked down. Ethan continued, I've learned a lot from Victoria. Daniel looked at Marcus. Marcus whispered, this is unbelievable. Daniel didn't answer. He looked toward Lily. She was staring at him with confusion. He smiled at her. That smile was difficult, but he managed it. Then Ethan said something that changed the atmosphere completely. I think leadership is about understanding that sometimes loyalty isn't enough. Daniel's eyes moved toward him. Ethan looked directly at Daniel. Results matter. A few people shifted uncomfortably. Everyone knew what he was implying. Daniel had spent years producing results. His department had broken records twice. He had personally prevented a multi-million-dollar contract from collapsing. He had redesigned the company's distribution system. He had done everything the company had asked. But Ethan stood on the stage because he was Victoria's nephew. Daniel slowly stood. Lily looked up. Daddy. Daniel walked toward the exit. Marcus stood immediately. So am I. Another employee rose. Then another. Victoria noticed. Her smile disappeared. Where is everyone going? Nobody answered. Daniel reached the ballroom doors. Marcus followed him. Then came Sarah from finance. Then Michael from sales. Then 2 regional managers. One by one, employees began standing. Victoria looked across the room. What is happening? Her chief financial officer stood. Victoria. She stared at him. You're leaving. He nodded. Yes. Why? He looked toward Daniel. Because this isn't recognition. The room went silent. Victoria's expression hardened. This is a celebration, the CFO replied calmly. Then celebrate. He walked away. Others followed. Within moments, the ballroom was emptying. Not everyone left, but enough people did, and the sound of hundreds of footsteps moving toward the doors was louder than any applause. Ethan stood frozen beside the stage. Victoria stared at Daniel. You're responsible for this. Daniel stopped. He turned around. No. Victoria narrowed her eyes. You've been poisoning people against management. Daniel shook his head. I haven't said one word. Then why are they leaving? Daniel looked around the ballroom. Because they're choosing for themselves. Victoria's face reddened. This company doesn't run on emotions. Daniel nodded. I agree. He walked closer. It runs on performance. Victoria crossed her arms. Exactly. Daniel looked at the screen behind her. Ethan's photograph was still displayed. Then publish the promotion criteria. Victoria said nothing. Show everyone the performance reports. Still nothing. Show them Ethan's results. Ethan stepped forward. You're out of line. Daniel looked at him. No, I'm asking for the same transparency you just asked everyone else to believe in. Ethan's confidence began to disappear. Victoria stepped between them. Daniel, you're dismissed from the event. Daniel nodded. Understood. He turned toward Lily. She ran to him. He crouched down. Come on, sweetheart. Lily wrapped her arms around his neck. Did they give your job to someone else? Daniel swallowed. Yes. Why? Daniel looked toward the stage. Then back at his daughter. Sometimes people make decisions for reasons that have nothing to do with your worth. Lily frowned. That's not fair. Daniel smiled sadly. No, it isn't. Behind them, Marcus approached. Daniel. Daniel stood. Marcus handed him a folder. What is this? Something I've been keeping. Daniel opened it. Inside were copies of operational performance reports. His reports. Savings. Efficiency improvements. Client retention numbers. Emergency interventions. Everything. Marcus whispered. I knew tonight might happen. Daniel looked at him. You prepared this? Marcus nodded. I didn't know if I'd need it. Daniel stared at the papers. What are you going to do? Marcus glanced toward Victoria. Walk out. Daniel shook his head. You don't have to. Marcus smiled. Yes, I do. One by one, more employees gathered near the doors. Sarah from finance stepped forward. I've already emailed my resignation. Michael from sales nodded. Same. Another employee said, me too. Daniel looked stunned. Everyone, stop. Sarah shook her head. No, don't make decisions because of me. This isn't because of you. She looked back at Victoria. This is because of what she did. Victoria stepped off the stage. Everyone who leaves tonight should remember that employment is a privilege. The room went completely silent. Marcus looked at her. No, Victoria. She stared at him. Careful. Marcus smiled bitterly. For 9 years, Daniel worked weekends without being asked. He covered emergencies. He trained people who later became managers. He pointed toward Ethan. And you gave his position to someone who hasn't completed a single regional operations cycle. Victoria said, Ethan has executive backing. Marcus nodded. Exactly. That single word cut through the room. Victoria's jaw tightened. You're all making a mistake. Daniel looked around. He saw fear on some faces. But he also saw determination. He put his hand on Lily's shoulder. Let's go. As Daniel reached the doors, Victoria called out. Daniel. He stopped. You'll regret this. Daniel turned. I already regretted staying silent. Then he walked out. The doors closed behind him. For several seconds, Victoria stood alone in the ballroom. Ethan remained beside her. The giant screen continued displaying his photograph. But nobody was applauding anymore. The following morning, Sterling Dynamics was in chaos. At 8 a.m., Victoria entered the executive conference room expecting her usual leadership team. Only 3 people were present. She frowned. Where is everyone? Her assistant hesitated. Some haven't arrived. Why? They resigned. Victoria sat down. How many? The assistant looked at the tablet. 27 overnight. Victoria stared. 27? Yes. And Daniel? He submitted his resignation at 6:12 a.m. Victoria leaned back. For the first time, uncertainty crossed her face. Where is he going? We don't know. Ethan entered the room. What's happening? Victoria looked at him. Your new division has lost several key employees. Ethan frowned. Because of Daniel. Victoria didn't answer. Her assistant placed another document on the table. There is something else. Victoria opened it. Her expression changed. It was a report from one of Sterling Dynamics' largest clients. The client had placed several upcoming contracts on hold. Reason: leadership instability. The client specifically requested that Daniel remain involved. Victoria slowly looked up. Who else has received offers? The assistant hesitated. Most of the people who resigned. From whom? A competitor. Victoria's face became pale. Which competitor? The assistant answered. North Star Logistics. Ethan laughed nervously. They're bluffing. The assistant shook her head. They already hired 3 of our regional managers. Silence. Victoria closed the folder. Get Daniel's number. Her assistant looked uncomfortable. I don't think he wants to speak with you. Victoria snapped. Get it. Meanwhile, Daniel sat at his kitchen table. Lily was eating cereal. His phone buzzed repeatedly. Daniel looked at it. 37 missed calls. He put the phone face down. Lily looked at him. Daddy. Yes. Are you sad? Daniel smiled. A little. Because you lost your job. Daniel thought about it. No. Then why? Because I realized I spent a lot of time trying to prove myself to people who had already decided what they wanted to believe. Lily nodded as if she understood. Then she smiled. Maybe you should work somewhere that knows you're good. Daniel laughed. Maybe I should. At that moment, his phone rang again. This time the caller was Marcus. Daniel answered. Hey, Marcus said, turn on your email. Why? You're going to want to see this. Daniel opened his laptop. An email from North Star Logistics was waiting. The subject line read, Executive Operations Leadership Opportunity. Daniel opened it. The company was offering him the position of Vice President of Regional Operations. Salary, benefits, authority, and something even more important. They wanted him to bring his leadership team with him. Daniel stared at the screen. Marcus laughed through the phone. I told you. Daniel shook his head. This is unbelievable. No, Marcus replied. This is what happens when someone finally sees your value. Daniel looked at Lily. She was drawing at the table. He smiled. Maybe it's time. That afternoon, Sterling Dynamics board held an emergency meeting. Victoria entered confidently, but the board members weren't smiling. The chairman placed a document in front of her. Victoria, we need to discuss yesterday. She sat down. I know people resigned. It's more than that. He pushed another report forward. 3 major clients have suspended contracts. Another board member spoke. Our stock is down. Victoria frowned. This will stabilize. The chairman looked at her. Will it? She remained silent. Then he asked, why did you promote Ethan? Victoria answered immediately. He has executive potential. Based on what? His strategic understanding. Based on what measurable results? Victoria hesitated. The chairman leaned back. That's the question everyone is asking. Ethan entered the room. Aunt Victoria. The chairman interrupted him. Ethan, sit down. Ethan sat. The chairman continued. Your appointment has created a leadership crisis. Victoria said. Daniel organized this. The chairman shook his head. No. He placed a thick folder on the table. This did. Victoria opened it. Inside were performance reports. Daniel's performance reports. The chairman looked directly at her. You promoted your nephew over the highest performing operations leader in the company without a documented performance-based justification. Victoria didn't respond. The chairman continued. And now the people who trusted Daniel are leaving. Ethan lowered his eyes. Victoria looked at him. For the first time, she seemed to realize what she had done. She had believed that Daniel would simply accept the decision. She had believed employees would complain for a day and then return to work. She had underestimated what years of loyalty meant. More importantly, she had mistaken loyalty for weakness. The chairman stood. The board has voted to suspend Ethan's appointment pending review. Victoria looked shocked. What? We will also conduct an independent review of the executive promotion process. Ethan looked at his aunt. You said this wouldn't happen. Victoria had no answer. 3 weeks later, Daniel stood inside the headquarters of North Star Logistics. He wore a dark blue suit. His office overlooked the city. On the wall was a photograph of Lily. Marcus entered carrying 2 coffees. So, Marcus said. Daniel smiled. So, Marcus placed 1 cup on the desk. How does it feel? Daniel looked around. Different. Better. Daniel considered the question. Healthier. Marcus laughed. You know what I heard. What? Sterling wants you back. Daniel shook his head. Not happening. They offered you director again. Daniel smiled. Too late. Marcus nodded. Then his expression became serious. You know what the funniest part is? What? Yesterday, Ethan resigned. Daniel looked surprised. Why? He got tired of being the person everyone blamed. Daniel sighed. I don't blame him. Marcus nodded. Neither do I. Daniel looked out the window. What happened to Victoria? She stepped down as CEO. Daniel turned. Really? Board decision. Daniel was quiet. Marcus asked. Do you feel satisfied? Daniel shook his head. No. Angry. No. Then what? Daniel smiled. Free. At that moment, Daniel's phone buzzed. It was Lily. A video message. He opened it. She was sitting at her school desk, smiling. Daddy, I got my science project back. Daniel smiled. What did you get? She held up the paper. A plus. Daniel laughed. That's my girl. She smiled. Are you coming home early? Yes. Promise. Promise. The call ended. Marcus smiled. You've got priorities. Daniel nodded. Always. He looked at the photograph on his desk. Lily's smile filled the frame. For years, Daniel had believed success meant finally being recognized by the people above him. Now he understood something different. Success wasn't being given a title by someone who didn't appreciate you. Success was knowing your worth well enough to walk away when someone tried to make you believe you had none. And that night at Sterling Dynamics had changed everything. Victoria had thought promoting her nephew would strengthen her company. Instead, it exposed the weakness inside it. She thought Daniel would walk away alone. Instead, people followed him. She thought employees depended on the company. She discovered the company depended on its people. And she believed Daniel had lost when he walked out of that ballroom. But he hadn't lost. He had finally stopped waiting for permission to succeed. Months later, North Star Logistics announced record regional growth. Daniel was promoted again. Marcus became regional director. Several former Sterling employees joined their team. And Daniel never publicly criticized Victoria. He never mocked Ethan. He never celebrated their downfall. When reporters asked about the famous night when employees walked out of Sterling Dynamics, Daniel gave the same answer every time. I didn't ask anyone to leave. Then he would smile. People simply made their own decision. And that was the truth. Because sometimes the most powerful protest isn't shouting. It isn't revenge. It isn't destroying someone who underestimated you. Sometimes it is simply standing up, walking through the door, and refusing to spend another day somewhere that doesn't recognize your value. Daniel had walked out of that ballroom with nothing but his daughter, his dignity, and a folder of performance reports.